If you've been around the direct response world, the direct response copywriting world, writing sales letters, writing that kind of advertisements, for very long, you've probably run into this advice that you should take the advertisements, the sales letters of like famous copywriters or A-list copywriters or effective copywriters. You should take winning ads and sales letters and copy them by hand. You should like grab a pen and paper and write out these sales letters, which can be thousands of words long. And in fact, as far as I'm aware, this advice goes back to Gary Halbert, although I'm sure that it existed before him. So a couple little, I have snippets open on my other monitor here. A couple places where he recommended it. In one edition of the Gary Halbert letter, he said, I want you to get a copy of the following ads and direct mail letters. Do you make these mistakes in English? What everybody should know about this stock and bond business, the Nancy L. Halbert heraldry letter, how to burn off body fat hour by hour. At 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise in this Rolls Royce is the ticking of the electric clock. Why men crack, how to collect from Social Security at any age, the Admiral Byrd Transpolar Expedition letter, the lazy man's way to riches, and in general, anything you can get your hands on that was written by Gary Bensavinga, Dan Rosenthal, Joey Kennedy, Pat Gerard, Steve Brown, Drew Kaplan, Claude Hopkins, Joe Carbo, Ben Suarez, Joe Sugarman, Gene Schwartz, and of course yours truly, meaning Gary Halbert. Onward. And here's where he drops this bit of advice. Now that you've obtained copies of these ads and letters, I want you to sit down and copy them out word for word in your own handwriting. Underline. Next, I want you to create a hand-drawn layout of each ad and direct mail package. Listen, the goal here is to get you to create a professional package completely comped up that's all ready to go, first to a typist, then to a typesetter. Now, after you've done all this, I want you to actually take one of these packages to a typist and then to a typesetter and have the ad or direct mail package typeset, then proof the ad, and after making any necessary corrections, have a Velox or stat made of it. All right, what you've just completed is all the necessary in-steps of writing out the final draft of an ad, laying it out and getting it typeset and stated and totally and perfectly camera ready so it can be given to a no-brainer publication printer. Do this, do it. Don't be simple-minded. Don't come to me and say, okay, Gary, I've got the idea, yada, yada, like, et cetera, et cetera. And he talks about the importance of hands-on experience. He says there's no shortcuts. And elsewhere in a separate edition of the Gary Halbert letter, he said you need to copy them word for word in your own handwriting. If you're really serious about becoming a master copywriter, you'll do this over and over. The idea here is not for you to steal these promotions, but rather to be influenced by them. You want good writing to become one of your automatic skills, and rewriting superb ads and sales letters in your very own hand is the best way in the world to do this. Okay, here they are. Now go for it. So again, that's Gary Halbert's recommendation. And honestly, I know of a lot of copywriters that have followed this to the letter. I've also heard of a ton more novice copywriters who are still getting into this advice, who are still following it. And that's what I want to talk about in today's episode. These are the proven direct response marketing, copywriting, and entrepreneurship success strategies you can use today to write your own ticket and create the life you want. I am Roy Furr, and this is Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. Now, here's today's breakthrough. Okay. So the title of this episode is Warning, Do Not Hand Copy Ads from Famous Copywriters. So before we get into like my specific recommendation in response to this and alternatives, ways to learn copywriting, etc., I do want to talk about the pros and cons of this. So first off, I will say that one of the most powerful pros in favor of this method of hand copying ads, like Gary Halbert talks about, is that it is a great way to slow down and to pay attention and to learn what's going on. Frankly, I have read a ton of ads. I've read a ton of sales letters. I've read, whether it's an example in a book or something I see online or whatever. And most of the time, probably 99% of the time, I am scanning. I am not slowing down and paying attention to all the minute little details of that sales letter. And so the way that you get yourself to slow down, well, one way to get yourself to slow down is to hand copy everything. Pro number 2 is you're writing in their style. I've told the story before about a friend of mine from high school who was an incredible rapper. Like by the time he was 16, 17 years old, he was as skilled as anybody would hear on the radio. And what he told me about how he got good at rap and how he recommended other people get good at rap was that he basically took every rap song that he liked and he memorized it. And in doing that, he internalized the skill of the MC who had done that original work, and he internalized the inflections, and he internalized the word play, and he internalized the rhyming and the rhyming structures, and he internalized all of the different skills. And yes, whether you like rap or not, there are a ton of skills that go into becoming a great rapper. And he internalized all of the skills that added up to all of these different rappers, and he could rap like any one of them. But the powerful thing that happened is when he internalized enough different people, he developed his own styles that was clearly influenced by these different people, but also unique. And so writing in their style, you can internalize all these different copywriters and learn what makes them powerful and also start to develop your own style out of that. Now, there's one more important pro, and that is handwriting. Specifically, writing things by hand is being proven through more and more research to have a unique link to your brain that typing on a keyboard does not. And so when you write things by hand with pen or pencil or whatever, there's something going on. So for example, people who take handwritten notes in class tend to learn the material better. People who do handwriting, there's a connection between, for example, journaling by hand versus journaling digitally, and having different benefits that come from the handwriting. Pretty much anything that you do via handwriting versus typing, there's something that goes on in the movements of your hand connected to your brain or whatever that seems to transcend the benefits that you get from typing. And so forcing yourself to do handwriting is there's some factor tied to your brain and your mind that seems to be an advantage over typing. So the cons that I hear of this is, number one, if we don't write by hand a lot, and I've experienced this plenty, if we don't write by hand a lot, and most of us don't have to write by hand a lot, it's like our muscles involved in handwriting are not nearly as developed and effective and strong and resilient, and they don't have the endurance of somebody who's handwritten their entire life, right? And so you end up with tired hands. And you end up with tired hands very fast. Like, oh, I've written a few hundred words of copy and my hands are exhausted. Okay, tired hands. That's a con. There's a thing called state dependence that is another con of this. So this is kind of a funny thing that if you in college, if you were to study for all of your tests when you were drunk or hungover, then it might actually be beneficial to show up for your test drunk or hungover, because research has shown that when you're in a certain state while you're studying, it is easiest to have recall if you're in the exact same state later. And so if you think about the state dependence tied to this, if you do all your copywriting on your keyboard, if you're typing all of your copy, the format mismatch has the potential that a lot of the learning and benefits that you might pick up from doing handwriting are not necessarily going to translate if you're sitting down to write copy in typing. Okay, so the format mismatch may cause, and I don't think there's been research into this. I don't know, but it may cause issues with state dependence, and you may not get the same benefit. Gary Halbert, when he provided this recommendation, Gary wrote almost all of his copy by hand on like a yellow legal pad, and he would give it to typists to type up for him. And so he's coming from this world and this experience where he's writing copy by hand, and he's telling you to learn copywriting by writing copy by hand. And so he doesn't have that format mismatch and that state dependence issue that you might run into if you were to try to adopt his same methods today. Also, when you are just copying, there's the goal of doing the handwriting and the hand copying of successful advertisements is to slow you down and to make you think about it. But if all that you're doing is just like, I'm copying this, they said I needed to copy this, so I'm copying this, that can be a very mindless exercise. You're going to lose a lot of the thought and mindfulness that has the potential to benefit you. And you're going to end up with something that's like somewhere between mindlessness and just superficial learning. Oh, they use this combination of words. They use this like, they use this sentence structure. And a lot of that is very superficial to the actual craft of copywriting and the actual skill of copywriting. And you're not going to get a lot of the deep thinking that goes with writing great copy. And so while some of that is important, like learning kind of how ideas are presented in effective copy, learning how sentences are structured and word choice, etc., really understanding copy at a deeper level is even more advantageous than understanding, oh, this headline formula works, right? So with that like pros and cons list out of the way, I want to talk about some alternatives. So one thing that I would say is that there are enough copywriters who have become successful copywriters, like ability to generate leads, customers, sales, and profits through creating response, through their ads, through their sales letters, whatever. And the track record, the success stories are there to the point where it might be worth doing this at least a little bit as a copywriter, even if it's just kind of an early exercise to learn copywriting a little bit better. And so my first alternative is to not invest maybe as heavily into it as Gary Halbert recommended, but to do at least some level of hand copying. And I fell into this camp. Like I never had the attention span to really dive in and, just on a regular basis over an extended period of time, sit down and hand copy all of these successful ads. I definitely did it with some. I definitely followed this advice at some point, but number one alternative is to copy minimally. Do that hand copying some. The next alternative, acknowledging that whole format mismatch thing and the state dependence, is to type it. To take those same ads and slow yourself down. I mean, that first passage that I read out of the Gary Halbert letter, one of the things that he talked about going through the entire process of like formatting it and all of that to make it basically ready to send to an advertiser. Well, at this point, so much of that happens in like Microsoft Word or whatever word processing doc or Google Docs or whatever, right? And so if you don't do it by hand, what if you type in all the copy? And what if you do all the formatting and you pay attention to it all in that way and copy it like with your keyboard, right? And then you're developing more of a format match and state dependence on, okay, this is what it feels like to write great copy with my fingers on the keyboard, not with a pen on the paper. Now, beyond just mere copying of the superficial, okay, here's the copy, I am a strong proponent and believer in doing actual breakdowns and line-by-line analysis of the copy. So what are they trying to do in this section? What's the wording in this section? Like, how is that relevant? How is the offer presented here? Why are they choosing this offer? Why did they structure the offer this way? Oh, they put the guarantee right after the price. Why did they do it that way? Why did they use this headline tied to this big idea of the advertisement? How did they structure the introduction to this? Where are they introducing different credibility and proof elements? And I'm asking myself all of these different questions about why would they make these decisions that led to this final product? And doing that kind of analysis allows you to kind of see inside the copy, to look inside the copy and get a better sense of why those advertisements worked in the first place and to learn from that to the point where even if you're writing in, let's say, a completely different language, right? Even if you're, instead of being an English language copywriter, you're a French language or Spanish language copywriter or, Japanese or Chinese or whatever language copywriter, right? Then you're no longer stealing words and phrases, right? But you're still saying, okay, here's the deep structure of the sales argument that is effective in this ad. And if I copy that deep structure, there's some potential for that to work for me as well. Another recommendation that I heard from Gary Bensavenga was that he actually sat down, instead of that hand copying thing, one of his big practices that he did on a regular basis was, if I had to beat the control, meaning if I had to take this ad that was here and change some things to make it perform better than it does right now, what would I do to this ad to give myself the highest probability of beating the control, of creating a better performing ad? And so you take this ad and you look at it, and it does force you to do that kind of breakdown and an analysis of like, what is this copywriter doing? But then it takes it one step further and you say, how could I do this better? What could I do better as a result of this? And there's an extra layer of thinking that comes from that you're never going to get just handwriting an ad. Another recommendation that I have for you just in general is to write a lot. So you can read a bunch of copy, and then you can write in your own voice. You can write in with your own approach, and you're still going to get better if you're studying, writing, even if you're never handwriting somebody else's ads. Like there's a learning process that comes from forcing yourself to put your thoughts on paper. And so writing a lot is a very important approach. And going back, not just studying other ads for learning the deep psychology of the ads, but to actually learn from copywriters, learning the deep psychology of what's behind effective advertisement is another recommendation that I have for you. So there's some things that you can get out of studying the finished product, but there are other things, other thought processes that usually you can only get by really kind of picking the brains of copywriters who are writing successful ads. And so, for example, my high velocity copywriting training program and my story selling masterclass, like high velocity copywriting, I go through different big idea types and templates or frameworks for writing copy from those different big idea types. The story selling masterclass, I go in and I talk about different stories as they're applied in different selling scenarios and writing marketing. And then I even, for two particular promotions, I actually went through on a line by line basis, and I would read it, and then I would have a note about what was going on behind the scenes for each individual thing and how especially story selling principles were being applied. And so I would actually explain the thinking behind the copy. And so that's that kind of breakdown and analysis that I was talking about with studying. So, I open this the warning, do not hand copy ads from famous copywriters. You can do it. And I'm sure that at least one person is going to say, oh, I did it, and it was critically important to me becoming successful as a copywriter. My recommendation is that it's not the only path to success. And in fact, there are lots more paths that will lead you to better copywriting thinking, which is even more powerful than just copying the superficial details of the ads. And, if you were to update Gary Halbert's challenge today, it would not necessarily be to handwrite all the ads, but going through that process of how can I take ads that I see in a finished product and go backwards through that process as if I were the copywriter trying to get this ready for publication. And how can I take that same copy and basically go from putting the copy on paper to getting it ready to publish, let's say handing it off to a web designer and giving them adequate advice around the design principles at play and so on. So do not hand copy ads from famous copywriters, except for maybe a little bit, but then go much deeper into the different approaches to studying. And if you are interested in going deeper into my training, High Velocity Copywriting and Story Selling Masterclass, they are part of my BTMS Insiders training library. It's like Netflix, but for copywriting and marketing training, where you pay one low monthly fee and you get instant streaming access to the entire catalog. And so you can watch it as much as you'd like. You can go through the additional resources, et cetera. And those are there's dozens of training titles in there available for you, and well over 100 hours worth of total training for copywriters and marketers. So leave a comment with this episode. Let me know, have you done hand copying of different ads? Have you done handwriting of different ads? How did it work for you? What are your takeaways? What are your action items from it? What are your takeaways and action items from this in particular? Do you agree with me, disagree with me, whatever? Let me know in the comments below. Also tap that like button before you go so you get more content like this delivered to you. And so the magical algorithms of the internet know to share this with other people like you who will find it valuable, you can certainly share it with folks directly. And subscribe before you go. Subscribe here. Also go to breakthroughmarketingsecrets.com. Get my daily emails Monday through Friday, including episode notifications and more exclusive content for email subscribers. I'm Roy Furr. This is your daily episode of Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. I always aim for 10 out of 10 value. I hope I've delivered it here, and I'll catch you again in the next episode. Thank you once again for tuning in to this daily episode of Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. Remember, check out the links with this episode for even more value. Now make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, and engage in every way you can to keep this show going and growing and delivering daily value to you. I'll catch you soon for your next big breakthrough.